holding back is so close to stealing.
Anxiety and fear we often see as a sign that we shouldn't be doing something.
A lot of people are blocked around even being okay to be seen.
I've seen you up on stage, there's 1,000 people in the audience. How do you feel before you come through the door?
I've been doing this for 20 years. The truth is,
Reuben Christian is an award-winning edutainer and founder of Dream Rehab, helping people pursue personal growth through community-driven events and coaching.
how fucking great would it be if the thing that you were scared of the most wasn't a fear anymore? The only way to grow is to feel those feelings, manage them and push through them.
I think one of my fears around my visibility is
I would have never thought that's a fear you hold.
no one wants to talk about that.
We suffer more in our imagination than in reality.
One more question before we wrap up. You went and sat down with Stephen Bartlett to interview him. What was that like for you?
Interesting question, bro. Stephen...
Welcome back to another episode of the Authentic Man podcast. I'm your host, David Chambers, and today I have with me a man who I'm lucky enough to call a friend, a man who is an award-winning podcaster, speaker, host, and has spoken at some of the biggest events and with the biggest people in the world, really. You know, names like the BBC, Red Bull, TED and TEDx, and a man that we all know very well, Stephen Bartlett as well. So today we have with us my friend, Reuben Christian. How are you doing today, Rubes?
Oh, David, I'm feeling warm inside, man. I think you should do my PR. That intro. Do you know what? If I could just capture it on audio and just let it play before I go on stage, I think I'm set up nice. So I'm feeling warm, thank you. Yeah, really, really nice intro. I appreciate that. I'm feeling grounded. I've got an excited and a bit of a nervous energy about this conversation, you know, I've been a big fan of your work before I even knew you. I've been listening to the podcast a lot. And then obviously we worked together and you coached me. And then from there, we've moved from coach to coachee relationship to a friendship, which has deepened over the last year or so. And now I'm on this show having a chat with you. So there's excitement and a bit of anticipation and maybe 6% anxiety, which is a healthy place to be, I guess.
Yeah. I think when it comes to hosting, but for me, it's mainly podcasts and sometimes events. I'm often really quick to tell people I feel nervous or I feel scared or I feel uncomfortable. And people are always really shocked to hear that when I say that to them. So I guess maybe for you, off the back of that is when you're going up on stage, because I've seen you up on stage, in person, when you did Paul Bronson's book launch, there's 1,000 people in the audience, you're coming out, you're kind of there to entertain and bust joke and enlighten the audience in many ways. How do you feel before you kind of come through the door or come through the curtain, should we say?
That's such a beautiful question, man. And I don't think I can answer it as a given all the time, right? So every single pre-gig experience is a self-contained experience. And it really does depend on the gig, right? So if we're talking about that gig in particular, Paul C. Brunson, bro, I didn't sleep properly for 2 nights before. Now, I don't know if it is because I knew this was a big gig and it means a lot to me, so I was a bit anxious. But also, I was just going to bed a bit late. I just wasn't on top of my self-care. So my body wasn't as regulated or as primed for the gig on that day, which really affected how I somatically felt in my body before going on. Now, I'd done enough of my rehearsals, reading over my lines, listening to my own voice notes of what that intro might be in my head. I'd done as much of that as possible, but still, man, before I was going on, and I'm just behind, because you saw how I came out, those doors open, I went onto that big stage and it's that big auditorium, right? And the DJ's playing and it's just all energy. The nearer it comes to the moment of announcing my name, the more my body does its somatic thing, right? So the knees are a bit jelly, you get the anxiety in the chest, but I'm so used to that feeling. I've been doing this for 20 years. And the truth is, if the gig matters to you, your body is going to respond that way. And that doesn't mean you're just full of fear. It doesn't mean you're a bad speaker. It just means that you're human and that this thing matters. So I knew that would be my experience. And so when I opened the door and they said my name, I went on, I was still in that energy in my body until I started connecting with the crowd. We got some laughs, and then my body was like, oh, we're safe in this space, you know, and then I could get into it. But it really does depend. If the gig is big and it means a lot, there's going to be more nerves. If it's something I'm quite used to, it's fine for me. If that answers your question.
Yeah. And because I imagine that, you know, a lot of the people listening are people who maybe want to speak more, or, you know, something that's being not demanded of them. They feel called to do through their work, through their business. And often I see with people, you know, work in the realm of dating and relationships, that we experience those sort of sensations you're describing there, you know, nervousness, jelly in the knees, like anxiety, dry mouth, all these things, as almost like a sign that maybe we shouldn't be doing this thing. Like anxiety and fear, we often see as a sign that we shouldn't be doing something. So I'm interested in that. When you're kind of mentoring and working with people, what are some of the kind of common blocks to people, kind of their self-expression, and to them being, say, more visible in the world?
Firstly, on your part, on that point around the body's reaction, again, like I answered in the first question, right? It's totally normal. I would go as far as to say, if your body is reacting in that way, you are at a growth edge, man. You know, because if we're comfortable in our environments where we're not really, our body isn't activated, we're at homeostasis. You know, we're feeling calm, and the body's job, or the body just wants to always go back to homeostasis. It just doesn't want to be scared. It doesn't want to be alarmed. But the only way to grow is to feel those feelings, manage them, and push through them. So if someone's getting up and doing a talk or whatever, and that comes up, just know that that's a good sign that you're doing something courageous and you're at a growth edge and you're expanding. That's the first thing. In regards to some of the common blocks, man, a lot of people think, in terms of visibility and public speaking, I'm just worried about the audience, like speaking in public. But when we go deeper, like, as you know, bro, like with the work you're doing, it's really about getting someone to understand what the layers underneath the first layers are. And so a lot of people are blocked around the idea of it even being okay to be seen, right? So whether it's them physically putting themselves out online on a video, or getting on the stage and talking about themselves or their work, there is a narrative, there is a story, there is a block, usually coming from the past, some legacy thing, maybe with your family, or how you were, what culture you were brought up in, or how you were socialized, that says, do not be the center of attention. That's for narcissists, you know, or that's for like over performative extroverts. Like, there's no humility in that, especially in Britain. You go to America, these people would just chat absolute shit with so much conviction about any old nonsense a lot of the time, right? Whereas you go to Britain, like, someone could have won awards and they'll be like, well, yeah, it wasn't just me. It was just the team. And, you know, we give thanks. Yeah, we do. And yeah, the team did help, and humility is really important. But I think it would be really nice, David, for a lot more of us to be able to sit in the appreciation of our gifts and our expression. And that wasn't taught to us. I almost feel it was actively, we were actively told to not do that. Like, I've been brought up as a Catholic. Oh my God. We just serve others. We just give. We don't take up any space. You know, that's just the wrong thing to do. And I think there's a middle ground. I think there is a middle ground between humility and feeling okay with taking up space. So I think a lot of those are blocks coming from the past. There's a story underneath there.
It's like beliefs and stories. And it's interesting to talk about taking up space, because, you know, I've seen this with people, you know, even in sometimes I work with coaches and stuff. It's just like, there's this feeling that taking up space is bad. That taking up room and space and taking up, and then when we say space, when I say space, I don't mean just physical space. Even making sound is a way of taking up space. That in some way, if I am taking up space, I'm taking space from other people as well. You know, we often, you know, that's come into play with people. It's just like this kind of constant internal pressure we put on ourselves to shrink ourselves, right? To kind of avoid, and I see this a lot in the work that I do, is like avoidance of judgment, Yeah. Like let me not put myself in a position where other people can judge me negatively, especially with this assumption that actually by whether it's a coach I'm working with and they're wanting to post their thoughts and ideas on Instagram, or it's a coach I'm working with and they want to publicize themselves and sell a product on online or some way, there's this kind of fear that other people are going to just swoop in any moment and just rain judgment down on them. And I wonder if that's something that you also see in the people you work with when you're kind of coaching around speaking and visibility.
Yeah. Again, great question. Before I get to the people I work with, let me put the lens on me, right? So the first time I even thought that I might want to do a YouTube video, I was shitting it. Like just to know in my head, like you could think about it and you're okay. But I think a lot of people might know that when you make the decision that I'm going to do it, something changes because now all of a sudden it's happening. And then your body starts doing its nonsense again, right? So I remember that my first YouTube video I put out, it's still on YouTube somewhere. If anyone wants to waste their life going to watch it, you'll see me with hair on it. It's called UK Talk to Me. It's my YouTube series called UK Talk to Me, where I just go on the street with a microphone, interviewing people and just talking like absolute malarkey, just for the fun of it, for comedy. I remember I went out, I recorded it with my friend. I approached a few people and then I was watching the video back and I was like, actually, this is actually quite funny. I actually think it's funny. So then I edited it into something that I feel was even funnier, right, than just the individual clips. Now I watched it back. I showed a few people in my inner circles and they're like, I think that's funny. And now I was like, okay, cool. It's going to go live. I'm going to put it on YouTube. David, I uploaded it to YouTube and just left it there for a week. I didn't make it. I left it on private for a week. And then I had to get someone else to press make public. And I was out. I didn't do that. I was like, here's my code. I'm going out for the weekend. You do it. And I'm going to come back on Monday. But all of that to say that the first time we do something, the first time we open ourselves up, because really it's an act of vulnerability. I think I had the same fears. I thought the comments, they will just come for me. It would be racism, or it would be something about how I'm looking, or maybe the way I talk because I'm from East London. My brain was just layering fears upon fears. And then for me anyway, and this may not be the same case with everyone, but for me, I came back and checked the comments and people were laughing. And it's those, and as in, haha, this is funny, do some more. And I honestly feel, bro, if I didn't take that first step to put this out and didn't get those little nuggets of validation from people, which I feel is the fuel in the tank to want to do it more, I may not have done it. You know, and then I done more of those videos. And then from those videos, people asked me to host live events. And then my career just emerged into public speaking and edutainment. But if I didn't put out the first one, my whole career wouldn't exist. I don't know what I'd be doing. I might still be working my old job in retail, which was fun at the time, but just ultimately not what I wanted to do. Yeah.
I can have a bit of an experience. I'll describe about the first time we put a podcast episode out.
Yeah.
It was me and Ahmad. Yeah, well, a long time ago. You know, big up Ahmad. I just went to his final part, the third part of his wedding a few days ago.
3 weddings, you know.
I know. And I think it was Boxing Day. Because we'd had an initial date way back before then. We'd recorded this podcast episode months before. Like, got all the stuff. We found someone to do the illustration of us two and blah, 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 blah. And we sat there, had it uploaded, had all the bits uploaded to what we're using, the platform we're using. And we sat there and there was a button that just like says publish. Yeah, a little button calls publish.
Yeah.
And we sat there, 2 of us, and we were like, holy shit, if we press this button, what you said goes out into the world. And then everybody can hear it. Everybody's going to listen to it. And we were sitting there going, okay, what could happen? We were like, there might be ex-girlfriends that come for us. People might call us liars. Like, people might come out the woodwork and say we hurt them in some way. Like, we sat together, I think in my front room on Boxing Day, talking about all this. It must have been, talking for an hour or so. Then we pressed that button. Press the button. And I think, it goes out into the internet world. And then we talked about it a bit on Instagram. I think we, blah, blah. Nothing happened. Nothing happened.
Yeah.
Nothing happened. No one came for us. Like a few friends listened to it, you know, that's what happens. Like people listen to an episode or two. If you know, when you've created a podcast, you know, well, a few people will listen, the people you know will listen to the first few episodes and tell you it's good and so forth. But nothing happened. Nothing negative happened. All that stuff that our minds had generated. It's a bit like yourself, right? When you saw all that stuff that the mind said, the negativity, the fear, the judgment, like all of that weight never came to pass. None of it actually happened. We put that podcast out and, you know, I sit here 300 plus episodes later, still putting out podcast episodes, still pressing that button. Actually, I don't press the button myself anymore. I have a team to do that.
Jeez.
But it's amazing how the mind creates so much information, so much emotion around just the revealing of ourselves, right? I've been saying this term a lot actually in my work with people, this revealing, because it is kind of what we're doing, right? You're bringing an aspect of you, you know, in your case, it was the being on the street and asking people questions and doing interviews that were fun and communicable. But that's a part of yourself you might have revealed to friends and people who are close to you, but in bringing it to YouTube is revealing it to the world, and our minds create such a story about it, you know, and that I imagine I know for a lot of people, the people that I've worked with, the coaches I've worked with, that those emotions and feelings are the thing that stops them from putting themselves out into the world, you know? Like I know so many great coaches, so many great practitioners who are not out in the world doing their greatness simply because they can't move past this piece around the feelings and emotions they have about putting themselves into the world.
Bro, I actually felt that in my chest, man. Yeah, it saddens me. I was going to say it triggers me. It doesn't trigger me. It saddens me, which is why I do the work that I do around visibility, right? There's two quotes that for whoever's listening, I really almost want them to write this down and put it in a frame and put it up in their studios or in their flat or in front of their toilet or wherever they are, man. Like these were two quotes that I had up in my studio for years. And I was chatting about this to Merv, our friend yesterday, our good friend, Merv, who's a body confidence coach and photographer. And we were just talking about fear. And the quote is this, and I've run a workshop on this and I coach a lot of clients through this. It's from Seneca the Younger, a philosopher, if you're familiar with him. I'm sure a lot of the men listening will definitely know Seneca, right? It's this. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. It's so clean. We suffer more in our imagination than in reality. And if anyone wants to do any more like deeper digging on this, there's an amazing TED talk by Tim Ferriss called Fear Setting, which is similar to goal setting, but fear setting, you may be familiar with it. But he kind of hones in on that quote. And there's a way for us to like systematically get those fears out of our head. Do you know what I mean? Someone might take the piss out of me. I might lose my job. My ex might see it or whatever. Just get them out of your head and just rationally, because a lot of the time, men, I mean, I might be talking typically here, but we're quite prefrontal. We're quite rational. And so if we can rationalize a fear, we might gain more courage to move past it. So fear setting is an amazing, I guess, exercise for that. And then the other quote, bro, is going back to what you were saying about all these amazing coaches and practitioners and people that hold this wisdom because of their life's journey and their work. The other quote, and I got this from Seth Godin. I don't know if he got it from somewhere else, but it's holding back is so close to stealing. Bro, I had that in my studio and I've done a video of this. I put it out on my reels and I keep an eye on myself and I say to myself, Reuben, what are you holding back from giving to the world? Maybe it's due to fear or maybe it's due to you don't have permission from someone. But there are things that I've got and that the listeners have got and that your clients have got that if they were to give it to the world, it would improve people's lives in some way. So imagine if you and Ahmad didn't do that first podcast, right? You wouldn't have this whole show. Imagine how many people would have lost out from the amazing conversations you've had with people on this show. Bro, I wouldn't have been coached by you. to work through some of my avoidant attachment and gain the awareness and the new people and connections I've got in my life if you didn't press upload on that podcast. And I honestly feel like really passionately about that. I think there's so many people that are holding stuff back due to fear, and what they're actually doing is stealing from the rest of the world. Damn thieves.
But it's a really powerful like way to frame this, right? So I'm going to use two examples. The people I know, I won't use their names. I know of a coach and therapist who doesn't post anything to Instagram and so forth, right? Is often worried about other people's judgments or someone telling them they're wrong, right? And I know a middle manager who is an incredibly talented manager at managing people, right? Very good at managing people, which is a skill in companies that is actually really poorly, isn't really that common. You know, I worked in a lot of corporate companies in my tech days, and most of the managers were very good at their job that was beneath them. So it would have been, they were good developers or good testers or good project managers, but they weren't necessarily good people managers. So this person who's a very good manager, but this person really struggles to like step on the stage and speak. Has incredible amounts of wisdom and could teach so much and help people learn and facilitate things so well, but doesn't speak. So that person's stuck. They can't really move much above where they are, right? In the job they're in, because to move up to the next level for them would require them to do more public, well, not public facing, like internal facing work. And I guess the question I have is, since those are kind of two profiles that I see, and you know, the two examples there, if these were people you were working with, what sort of questions would you ask them to understand? You know, you might take them individually or just take one of those two people. What sort of questions would you be asking them to help them get a deeper understanding of where they're where the blocker is and where it's coming from for them?
Yeah, firstly, I extend a lot of compassion to anyone that is up against that block or that challenge, right? Because I know how debilitating it can feel. I know how limiting it can be to like life and to career, but I also know how real it is. And I know if someone is scared to get up and public speak, you can't just say, be more confident. You know, or you can't just necessarily rationalize it away, because the rational brain is only part of the fear. Like just doing some of the work that I've done with my somatic guide, Alex McCullough, she's really honed into me that a lot of the time, what we do and what we don't do is just led by our body's cues. So I think I would get curious about both of those parts, like the cerebral and the somatic with this person. I think I would first just open up the space for them to just talk and riff, because a lot of the time, if you have a very, at least for me anyway, when I'm working with people, I don't like to go in with really clear prompted questions. I'd like to open the space and just create a bit of an emotional safety and a bit of like rapport between us, so that person feels that they can just speak however they want to speak. Because a lot of the time when we're communicating, it isn't linear. You know, we'll say something and then we'll think of something else and then we'll think of something else, and then we'll slowly paint a picture from different angles. So I'll give them the space to say like, why are they here? What do they feel the challenges are? And tell me a little bit about your history around public speaking. And then stuff would come out. And I guess just like you do really well, bro, it's like you intuitively open more doors like of that conversation. So it's something that might come up, and a lot of the time it does, is the first time they got punished or blocked around expressing their needs or an opinion, you know, or just expressing in some sort of way. And a lot of us might think, oh, it's family. Maybe sometimes it is. Your dad or your mum said, don't take up too much space, you know your place, or aunties and uncles. Could also be peers, you know, like banter, which is just ridiculous. But when you're younger, like when I grew up, a lot of the boys would just take the piss out of each other. And we would say this thing, David, you would know as well, don't try it. Don't, if you really hone in on, don't try it. Don't even try. And we constantly, someone will try to do something, they'll try to do a skill on the football pitch, or they'll try and approach a girl, and the other guy's like, nah, bruv, don't try it, man. That's not you. And then what happens is we hear that years and years and years repeatedly, and we internalize, don't try it. And we just don't try any. We don't try anything. So yeah, I would open the space and let them speak. And then I would just try to get to where I think the early blockers was like, whose voice has come into your consciousness to say that you can't do this? And then once we kind of find that out, we can start the journey, because all the practical techniques come later on, you know, like the breath work and your posture and story. You know, if you're using slides, what do you want to start with? You know, like connection with the audience, all of that comes later. That's almost like icing on the cake. But we want to get them feeling, they first need to give themselves permission to take up space, and it's almost challenging those old voices. And then we do loads of little small tests to build confidence.
It's amazing that it's, you know, for me hearing this is just like so similar to, you know, even when I work with people, it's like it comes back to what messages did we get? What are we telling ourselves, right? And the somatic piece, which I think is so often forgotten, and a lot, especially in the world of kind of mentoring and coaching, especially in business, is like you might think, you know, you want to do something. You know, the mind is like, I want to get up on stage, but the body's like, fuck no. No.
It's not happening.
You know, the body's like, no, I'm gonna create so much tension for you that even if you want to walk up on that stage, your legs don't work. You know, your mouth, your throat stops working.
I would turn off your legs so you can't work, and then I would just pull the lever on your mouth so you can't speak. Imagine that. That's true. That's what we're up against. Yeah. But again, extending compassion to that, right? Like the body is designed to keep us out of the unknown. The body is designed to keep us safe and alive. So if the body, for some reason, suspects that that is an unsafe environment, it's going to do everything within its control to make us not go into that, right? And this is where we need to have the discernment. So sometimes before going up on stage and my body's popping off, I talk to it. I'll say, thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate you jellying my legs, mate. And I really appreciate you burning some fire in my chest, because I know you've got me. Like, you've got my best interests at heart. But you're a little bit lost, bro. Like, you're a little bit old school. And what you cannot see is the growth that comes off the other side of this uncomfortable feeling. So I almost maintain dialogue with it. And then I go on the stage with it, which is the fear. And then after a little while, it realizes we're safe, and then it starts to calm down. Maybe not necessarily in that first gig, but maybe in gig 5 or gig 6, because what the body needs is lived experience. It needs new somatic evidence that an environment is safe. You know, that's why people say with speaking or with comedy, the more you go up on it, the more comfortable you be. And what they mean by the more comfortable you will be is the more comfortable your body will be in that environment that it thought it was unsafe in.
Because, you know, public speaking and get up on stage, that's like, you know, rated as one of people's number one fears and phobias, right?
Yeah.
You know,
but wouldn't it be so
up there? Go on.
It is, but wouldn't it be? How powerful would it be, or how fucking great would it be if the thing that you were scared of the most, like maybe it's up there with death in the top 2 or top 3, wasn't a fear anymore, you know? Like, bro, the things that opens up. So going back to your people that, these amazing, talented practitioners, if they can get past that, and trust me, it's not hard to, it's very, very doable is what I'm going to say. I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's probably easier than they think if you have like a really caring guide, whoever that may be, right? Then all of a sudden, you are now in this new realm of possibility, and everything opens up for your personal development, for your business. Just so much opens up. The glass ceiling is just smashed. And I think that's a beautiful place to be.
And I think that's a good question. What do you see open up for people? You know, when you've worked with them and they start to get more comfortable with speaking, they start to take on opportunities or put themselves forward for certain opportunities that maybe they wouldn't even notice that there was fear there, right? They would have maybe just thought, that's not for me. You know, that lovely way our fear talks to us, like, oh, that's not for me, that's not me. And then now you've seen these people blossom, and they feel more comfortable and they feel more confident on stage and speaking, and even put themselves out through, you know, digital media and so forth. What sort of opportunities do you see kind of open up for people?
There's like three people I think come to mind at the moment. So opportunities appear both for personal life and professional life, right? In terms, actually, they're kind of the same. Like there's one person in particular who I was worked with, and she was quite scared of putting herself out on socials. She's amazing at what she does, but for some reason, there was this idea, and socials is interesting. So people can get on Instagram stories and they'll be okay because they know it disappears. But to put something up on the feed, there is this idea that it's etched into history forever to be judged. But the truth is, I asked many of the people I work with, is there a delete button or an archive button or a make private button? Yes. So at any time you can take something down, right? Anyway, this person started putting their reels out on Instagram, getting amazing feedback from people saying, oh, you're great at this, but also thank you, I needed that. And that fuel in the tank has got her to create more. But not only is she creating more, there's an exciting energy there now, which has unlocked creativity, which was also blocked and stifled. So how she's communicating creatively. So her creativity is unlocked. And then since then, she's been asked to speak at public events. You know, more people know about her and inquiring about collaborations and potential clients. So the professional side is obviously starting to open up. But then it's that confidence that you can't take away from someone, because they're now a little bit more confident to try something, and then they might try a new pitch with a company. You know, they might have a bit more of an honest conversation with their partner or somewhere else. You just start to gain more courage to try new things. Another person that I've worked with is a writer, and they have always written mainly for other companies. So their job is to write for other companies. And there was a fear around putting their own writing out. We worked through that over a period of time, like really incrementally and consciously and sensitively. And now they started writing poetry. They opened that pipe was blocked, and so much more is coming out. You know, so poetry is coming out. There could be a poet book going out. But then also they then got up and started performing poetry.
Wow.
And by doing that, there is a feeling that they can get up and perform, which is great. They can carry that into their new life, but they would go into new spaces and build a new community as well. So they're making more friends because they got the courage to go out into the space. Like this, I can go on. There's so many things off the back of, you know, being seen and putting ourselves out there.
And it's so interesting to hear like all these opportunities that get created and all the kind of side benefits as well. Because when we're thinking about doing the thing, when someone comes to us and goes, hey, can you, I'd love you to write a poem that I can, you know, put into my book, you know, under your name, or I want you to, you know, get up and do this talk about this presentation that you showed me. Our mind doesn't think about the opportunities. Our mind just thinks about what's going to go wrong and how bad, you know, the imagination piece and how bad that's going to be.
Yeah. We've talked about this before when you were coaching me, negative bias, right? Like we all have negative bias. And again, it goes back to safety. Like if we're talking about evolution, I imagine, and don't quote me on this, but I imagine back in the caveman days, if we're guarding the village and we had positive bias and we're like, oh my God, look at that blade of grass, how beautiful. Then all of a sudden a lion just comes and yams up the whole family. Do you know what I mean? We can't just be sitting on the gates just looking at daisies and just, you know, being grateful. The brain has evolved to keep us safe. So it's constantly scanning for danger. So it has a negative bias. And I think when that really landed for me, David, it allowed me so much grace, because just like a lot of men I imagine you work with and a lot of men that listen to this, we're fucking beating ourselves up, man. Like, I'm not good enough at this. I need to get better. I need to level up or whatever. It's just so horrible. And once I realized that part of our wiring is negative bias, I allowed myself to say, no, this is my wiring. It's not me. And so now I know that. How can I manage that? And how can I work with it?
Yeah, it's a strong one. You know, I feel like even for me personally, it's like a daily battle with the negative bias, you know? With the imagination, from Seneca's quote of like projecting into the future, how bad things are going to be. And then I always say this, when we do that, projecting into the future, using our negative bias, we also pull all the emotions from the future and dump them on ourselves in the now. So we're sitting there, you know, thinking about getting up on stage, for instance, right? Or putting ourselves out on Instagram. And then we think of all the future, all these tangent futures that we don't want, right? All these horrible, someone comes up and tells us, like in my case, one woman once came up and told me I was a danger to women. I've had women tell me that what I'm talking about when I'm talking about avoidant men, for instance, is like, that's not true. That will never happen. Like I'm being irresponsible by giving people hope that avoidant men might change, like all these sorts of things that come your way, right? But if I'm imagining all these things in the future, what I do is I think of all these negative pathways and I feel all the emotions now, in this moment now. And that becomes the thing, we talked a lot about blocks, but that becomes the experience I have of doing the thing. So if I do this thing, this is like, I take all the emotional weight and I dump it on myself now, not consciously, or the mind does this. And this is, I see is the thing that stops so many people from doing what they want, because they don't realize what they're doing. They're just like, thinking about this thing makes me feel like shit, right? So doing the thing, we assume that doing the thing will only be worse than thinking about it.
Man, that's so beautifully articulated, bro. It's such a real experience. It's such a real experience. And even though I've been doing like public speaking for 20 plus years, from hosting to stand-up comedy to whatever, and I've actively been putting myself in those spaces, when that experience kicks off for me, it's really hard, it's really hard to access the higher truth, which is I'll be okay. It's because I'm in the experience. It's almost like when you're triggered into this is how I explain it anyway, right? When someone is triggered into their experience of fear, especially, they're in a fire. Imagine you're inside a fire and it's burning you, right? And there's people standing around the campfire like it's fucking bonfire night saying, don't worry, the fire's gonna end soon and you're gonna get out over here. Yeah, I know, but bro, I'm being burnt. And sometimes it can be so overwhelming to reframe in those situations. So I guess my question to you is, if you don't mind, I know you're interviewing me, but I'm super curious. How do we, because I've got my ways, my somatic practices that Alex has kind of coached me on, but like how can someone regulate and let that pass through so that they can do the thing that they're scared of doing, which in this case might be public speaking? What would you advise?
I lean towards, actually, instead of, I think a lot of the angst that we create and the problem we experience is through the resistance of actually really feeling it. Like with the resistance, there's the emotions get kind of dumped on us, but a lot of our energy is taken up being like, no, I don't want to feel this. Let me think my way out of it. And we just kind of cycling. So I often say to people, like, lean into it, feel it. Just really feel it. Let yourself really feel that fear of going up on stage and what it's going to be like and what you're projecting. Just feel it, breathe it for like 5-10 minutes and really immerse yourself in the feeling, right? Allow yourself to feel it and be in it. And then settle yourself afterwards, breathe slowly, deeply, and come back to ground. And at that point, you've burnt off some of the feeling and some of the emotion. You've allowed yourself to really, be with it. And then you also have the experience of like being okay, of being like, okay. And at that point is to start to, okay, what do I actually want to create? Like, what do I want the experience to be like? Like, what do I want? Maybe I want to get up on stage at work and you want to give a presentation. Okay, how do you want it to go? What do you want it to look like? How do you want to start imagining yourself up on stage and start to walk the mind through that and go, okay, I'm going to talk well and everyone's going to clap. And then afterwards people are going to like go, it's such a beautiful talk and blah, blah, blah. And then feel some of those emotions as well. As like, not a contrast, but just like for finding that kind of middle ground between the fear and the joy. And I guess as a longer term thing is like how it would work for people is like, okay, so what do you need to do to make that reality happen? What do you need to start doing? Like, but I think the key is that because a lot of what do we do is the fear lingers because we don't actually completely allow ourselves to feel it. We just like dip our toe constantly in it, is to just like feel it completely and then come out the other side. And you might have to do this, something like this, like regularly every few days or once a week or so forth, just to be with that. Because otherwise we kind of have, the fear becomes this cloud that kind of lingers over us. And we can't release ourselves from its power.
Yeah. I thank you for sharing that and reinforcing that, man. I appreciate that. I feel as men especially, at least, I mean, I'm heterosexual, cis man, brought up in East London, right? In a multicultural society. My socialization around being a man and masculinity is that we shouldn't feel that. Fear in any sort of way. So when it comes up and we kind of even get an early like tingle of it, at least for me and a lot of people I know, we block the shit out of that. I'm not feeling that. I'm going to go off and do something else. I'm going to override it with anger or rage or energy or whatever. So if we've been doing that all our life, to ask someone to sit in it and feel it, not only is it a new felt experience, which is uncomfortable as hell, it also comes with this additional piece, which is a story around our masculinity. I'm feeling fear right now, but I shouldn't. I'm a waste man, or I'm a pussy, or whatever. And so for me, the journey's been quite a long one with feeling it. And what you are saying is so true. And I think now I am a lot better at noticing what is coming up and sitting with it, you know, and letting some of that charge pass through by almost accepting it like a electricity bolt that wants to pass through. Like it needs to move through, and you're going to feel a bit of like residue as it's passed. I will also say, in bringing it back to public speaking, for me anyway, and for a lot of the people I've worked with, the feeling can be so big that it's overwhelming to sit in it. But when they do sit in it, it will be reduced, right? To about, let's say they can take it down about 60%. But to sit in some uncomfortable feelings, which is still 60%, that's still challenging. So hats off for anyone that's able to do that. And then the next piece, honestly, bro, it's going back to what I said. We have to get the evidence on the stage or on the screen or doing the thing in order for our body to feel less scared the next time. You know, like there's no way around some of these feelings. There's only through. But all these techniques, like sitting in it, managing it, bringing it down, great. Like it's like public speaking can be like exposure therapy as well. You know, you don't say, I'm scared of public speaking, I'm going to get up and do that TED talk in front of 1,000 people, or I'm going to be a keynote speaker at the conference. Oh, bro, like that is going to be horrible, you know? Like the first thing is like you create your talk or you create your presentation, and maybe just run it by ChatGPT first. And then after that, tweak it a little bit so you feel more confident. Maybe then do it to one person that you feel safe with. Then invite a few more people around that your body and mind feel safe with, and then do it there. And then, you know what, just incrementally give your body permission to do this thing, and then work your way up. You know, what we don't want to do is shock ourselves, because that shock, the body will hold on to that experience almost in a traumatizing way. So yes, almost like slow steps is like a bit like exposure therapy.
Yeah, taking it easy. And it might be, you know, I think even like recording yourself, you know, listening back to it can be, I know for myself when I did the podcast, like the first time I was listening back to myself, it was horrible, but it creates a resilience when you do it many times. And, you know, recording ourselves, as a lot of people, it's like once it's recorded, it's like watching it back, as painful as it might feel, I imagine, allows them to, especially if they are maybe joined by someone they know who can prompt them to, like, instead of just looking at how terrible they are, negative bias, to look for what they're doing well, I imagine as well, can be quite useful for someone. Yeah.
Most people don't do that. You know, when we're doing fear setting, we're listing the fears, but then also we're listing the upside. Like, what is the upside of this? What are the benefits for my development for the world? And the more we get into the practice of listing that, it disempowers the negatives, which we're just focusing on all the time. And going back to what you were saying about hearing your own voice for the first time, bro, like years ago, before I put that first video out on YouTube, I decided that I was going to do it. I locked myself in my room. It was just me in my room. I had those big IKEA Pax mirror wardrobes, you know them ones? And I looked at the mirror and I tried to present. I couldn't look at myself. I couldn't, like, no one was there. But it was a part of my psyche or my brain saying, who do you think you are? Like, what you're a presenter, what you're going to try and be funny, you. And I would just do it in front of the mirror and I would feel cringed I was cringing over my own self and no one else was in there, you know? And a lot of us are up against that. Yeah, it's layered. So I relate to the experience and I think a lot of other people will as well, especially getting out, seeing themselves, hearing themselves back for the first time. But the more you do it, you get used to it.
Yeah. It's a slight change of direction in that, you know, a lot of people, when they start to put themselves out into the world, they start to lose their voice. You know, they start to lose their own kind of authentic way of being, you know, whether it's because they are trying to live up to what other people want them to be like, or how they think they're going to get best received or going to kind of best plaudits. And I guess it's a double question almost. Maybe there might be a triple question is, you know, first of all, like, what is authenticity to you? And how do people maintain their authentic voice in the face of, you know, being in high pressure environments, plus also coming up against the kind of being liked and desire to be liked?
What is authenticity to me? I would probably need to journal on this in order to get like a clean sentence, right? But this is my messy attempt to answer it. I think for me, authenticity is showing up in the world as honestly as I know I can be in regards to where I'm at with my awareness. So for example, right? If it feels really, really important for me to express myself in a comical way, and I think that's important to me at this moment in my life, yeah, I'm going to do that, which is what I done when I was doing stand-up, which I'm back into doing now. But when I was like, I want to do comedy. That feels true to me. So I would go and do it. But then later on, I realized that comedy was also a part of masking, right? So I got some new awareness. And so now authenticity didn't feel like comedy. Authenticity felt like having deep and honest conversations with friends, family, and loved ones. So that became my authentic version of myself at that given point. Because I think we're all evolving and we have a certain amount of awareness on what we think our whole selves are, our authentic self. But if we can, like, wherever you're at with that, if you can show up in that way, that's good. And then later on you would realize that there's a bit more things that are in my shadow that I want to bring forth and whatnot. So authenticity to me at the moment is showing up as I know myself to be right now on today. And sorry, what was the other question? Can you remember?
How do we kind of maintain our authentic voice in the face of kind of high pressure environments? You know, how other people want us to be, and even, you know, the kind of, you know, especially with social media and media in general, is like the desire to be liked or, you know, getting validation. How do we maintain our authentic voice in the face of all of that?
It's a tricky one, because you'll speak to some people that coach on authenticity and visibility, and they'll say, like, at all times you got to be yourself, you got to live your true self. But we all know we're part of a society, right? Unless you're off grid living in the tree or whatever, you're part of society, and part of society is, at least in my opinion, integration, compromise sometimes. And I think it's important for us to like ebb and flow with that in society, because I think belonging is one of our drivers as human beings, right? We want to belong. I think a lot of people are scared to show themselves because they think they will be an outcast or ejected from a community or a space, which is wired into us. So I totally get it. You know, I totally get the people pleasing. I totally get the compromising, because we want to stay locked into society. We don't want to lose our job. We don't want to lose our relationship. So I think it's a case to case thing. I think we might know when we're being disingenuous to ourselves. And if we feel we are, i.e. we're not saying something at work or we're not saying something in our relationship, then I think it would be good to sit down and work out what that is and do some work on the why, and maybe get some support and see how you can make small steps towards being a bit more vocal or being a bit more seen in those spaces. But I would definitely say to anyone that is going through that, which is probably the majority of us at different levels, is that that's normal, and that's an on interrogation and discernment on how much we want to say and how much we want to be seen. Now, for me, for example, I started off in entertainment, right? And performing. The reason why I got into comedy is because I just got sacked from so many places because I was speaking. I was, what's the word? Challenging authority, like management or whatnot. Because if I felt something was wrong, my sense of injustice is just really, really high. I just couldn't. So I'd speak up to it, which was great on one side because I was advocating for what I believe is right in the world. But I'm not getting hired. I'm there to do a job, you know? So I was getting sacked. So I understand why people will be like, just keep it bottled in a little bit. So I went into comedy and I've just focused on performance and just really getting my authentic voice out. And all the projects that I've done after that is about trying to help the world do that. But yeah, small steps and see if you can get some support on that. Because there are consequences, you know, sometimes for telling your boss to dickhead.
And I also, something you said in there, I think is really important for us to remember is that this inquiry, this kind of being authentic, inauthentic, that, you know, I can see it maybe more of a spectrum, is always playing its part in our lives, you know? Like, it's always somewhere. There's always this, it's not like I'm being completely inauthentic through I'm using Instagram as an example, or my Instagram feed. It's more of like a percentage. It's like there's 2-3% of me that's not really showing up. There's 4-5% of me that's not really showing up. And kind of in what you're saying there is like interrogating why, like, oh, I'm afraid of someone disagreeing with what I say, right? It's a big one I see with people when it comes to kind of social media, is like not wanting to be disagreeable, not wanting to have people attack them or tell them they're wrong, or, you know, in that way. But so we end up in this kind of people pleasing and very vanilla and bland content that we're putting out because we're just like, well, I just want everyone to accept everything I'm saying. And the only way to do that is to basically just be really bland and easy. But that's at the extreme. There was always these like percentages and little pieces, like as one of my spiritual mentors would call it, it's like the grains of sand. Like, you've done the heavy lifting, you've done the rocks, you've moved the rocks in your life. It's just the grains of sand we also must look out for. Those little moments where we don't write the thing we want to write, or we decide, actually, I'm not going to put that out, I'm going to put something different out. And it's like looking at why we're doing that, as you said, of being like, oh, what's the kind of underneath that? Is that me being inauthentic to myself? Because, and I guess the because becomes quite important, isn't it? It's like I'm being inauthentic. I'm being slightly 10% inauthentic here because this thing is, I haven't finished this thought. It's not a fully fleshed out thought, or it's like the thing I'm saying isn't quite right. Or is it that I'm trying to avoid attack or judgment from people outside?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Do you know what I find interesting, or I really feel, and I wonder if there's research done on this, I really feel though that all of us, the majority of us, are up against those same blocks. And when we witness someone else take a leap of faith and show up a bit more authentically and courageously, we feel something, man. Like, you know, like we resonate with them. They've almost like given voice or language something in our experience, and we feel lighter, we feel more connected, maybe we feel a little bit more liberated. And so if more of us were doing that, I think it would just help people. Also, I guess this is a question to you, right? Like, if you saw, let's just say there's two coaches, I'm just randomly making up a story here, two coaches talking about the same topic, right? They both know the same amount on the same topic. One is putting stuff out that is fairly vanilla. It's all factual. You know what I mean? It's almost like AI could do it. And the other person is just speaking from their heart. They're being human, a bit more messy with it. Maybe they might be like getting one or two things wrong because they're a bit more passionate. Who would you connect with more?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The second person, and it's funny because someone sent me an Instagram message about a post I did, and basically was like, yeah, I had a post recently, it was about all the shit dating advice, right, that people get. It's very generic dating advice. Yeah. And I was basically talking about how it's more nuanced than that. And someone on Instagram messaged me and was like, do you realize like everything you put in that post is basically what this other account talks about all the time? And I went over to this other account because I know the account, and I was like, oh yeah. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And I, at the time, was like, oh, this person is this account I'm talking about. It's a very large account. We're talking million plus followers, probably maybe into the 1.5 million or so. And then I compare it to someone I'm also following, a guy I've had on the podcast actually, and his content is now very, I won't say it's polarizing, but very passionate and very direct. And I read every post he puts out, right? And I really enjoy it, you know. I really enjoy he's challenging a lot of the ideas we have around, especially in the space of like relationship, men's work, polarity work and so forth. He's challenging a lot of these like kind of guru-held ideas or these things that we don't kind of challenge. And I much prefer his content because for me, I'm like, it makes me think about my position, right? It makes me think about what I already know. And I guess maybe that's something important to remember for, you know, the listeners who are putting themselves on the world is some people, I think, just want to hear things that reinforce their existing idea of reality to make it, to create comfort for them. And over on the other end of the spectrum, there's people who want to digest content that makes them challenge their own like existing version of reality and maybe even feel a bit uncomfortable in it. And in many ways, there's a place for all those people, right? But I think those that challenge reality and challenge people's way of thinking, I think that's more useful, right? Ultimately, because, you know, we can go and create content that's like just saying the obvious thing, which is can be useful, but we've all heard it before. We're maybe a bit bored by it actually, you know, so people's unique voices, unique perspectives and experiences are incredibly valuable. You know, it's something, you know, one of my guys at one of my programs recently asked me my opinion on his content. And I basically was like, I don't feel you. I don't feel you. You're straying across
it's that word. It's the feel word, man.
Yeah.
I don't feel you.
Yeah, this is very generic surface level stuff. I want to know, why are you putting this out? Why is this important to you? Where's this happened to you in your life? Because that's the kind of part of the authenticity that I think that's really important, because that's what connects us to each other, right? You know, when personal story, personal interjection, like people's messy existences and what's come from that, what they've learned from that is one of the things that, you know, inside of, you know, my realm of like dating, relationships and intimacy is what really connects us together. And I don't think it's any different to when we start getting up on stage or we're, you know, creating content for YouTube, whatever. People do want information and knowledge, but I think what people want more is to feel who you are as a human being and connect with that. So they feel a connection, they feel like a togetherness, they feel a deeper understanding of the person in front of them, even if they don't agree with it sometimes, right? We just want to feel each other because there's so little connection in our lives, you know, the loneliness that people experience. You know, we think of men and loneliness, and I know I'm going a bit of a tangent now, but women aren't far behind, right? The statistics is really interesting. Okay. If you see the statistics, you know, it's like a third of men, I think, don't have a best friend in London. But for women, it's not like it's 1 in 10. I think it's like 25%, right? It's not much better, right? I had a quick look at that stats a little while ago. It's not much better. Don't quote me on that, people, but it's really not that much better. So we're all desiring to feel people. So like, whether that's through YouTube content, whether that's you're a manager at work, the people that you manage want to feel. They might be scared to feel you. They might not know how to, but they want to. Or if you're up on stage and you're presenting something, people kind of want to feel an authentic experience of this person. Like, I think it's one of the reasons why, and I keep talking, words keep coming out. It's one of the reasons why we like Stephen Bartlett, because I think he's actually sharing his own story, right? His own, like if you go through his podcast, especially kind of the early ones, he talks about his own struggles with relationships, with his, his family dynamic, and how that made him feel, like dropping out of university, the times he felt broke, like him really putting himself out there to get businesses started. We feel him, we feel the man. He doesn't get on and like completely remove his self from the interviews he's doing with these great people. He brings himself and his stuff and his worries and his fears and his aspirations with him. And I think that is one of the reasons why we gravitate towards him, as well as a kind of speaker and so forth.
Yeah. I've been to so many live events and watched some amazing speakers, keynotes, right? And I've watched loads of TED Talks, etc. And I can see the difference between someone that is a very polished and honed, like Toastmaster style public speaker. I'm like, okay, right, you've done the work, you understand stage presence and mic control and where you're moving around on the stage and cadence and spacing, and do you know what I mean? But then someone just gets up and they're just a bit messy, but they're fucking telling the truth and you can see it and feel it. That's the person whose stuff I remember. Not the trained glossy person. And it comes back to humanity. We want to feel a connection via humanity. And whether we're putting our work out or we're talking about our expertise, going back to what you said about stories, if we can imbue story, it can be within the framework of story, and truth, the message lands a lot better than giving us facts, datas and numbers. Because this is another deeper conversation, but when we're talking about storytelling and the power of storytelling, whether it's a TED talk or a presentation, human beings, we have so much information coming to us every day, bro. Like, walk down the street, there's 1,000 adverts, you go on your phone, you're scrolling, infinite scroll, blah, blah, blah. Our brain can't retain everything. So it needs frameworks by which to retain information. Stories are one of those amazing frameworks, which is why film does beautifully well, which is why music does beautifully well. Art does beautifully well. It hones, it encapsulates messages within stories. It's so powerful. I can chat about stories for ages, man.
Yeah.
In itself. Yeah.
But it's an important aspect of speaking, right? Is to bring, we're talking about authenticity, and you can't kind of divide authenticity from a person's story. Like, part of our individual stories is part of the authentic person that we bring to the stage, that we bring to the camera.
1,000%. And on top of that, I would say, and I guess this is just a random tip that I'm throwing out for anyone that wants it, if we just talk about our wins, especially at the beginning of a conversation or a presentation, you can lose a lot of people, Like, we think it's good to talk about our wins, but man, a lot of people can't relate to other people's successes. But what all of us, David, can relate to the human struggle, So the more we can talk about that honestly, I think, the more connected we would be to other people, and then lots of different things can happen off the back of that depth.
So someone is, they've listened to this episode and they've heard, the fears and the blocks and some of the ways to move through fear. What's your process, I guess, for creating like a new talk or workshop, or even when you're going to host an event? Like, what's your process to kind of bring the material together?
I think creating a talk and hosting an event are two different things. So let's talk about the hosting and then I'll do the talking, right? If I'm hired to host an event, my job is to do the event and the event's message justice, right? It's not the Reuben show. I'm a vessel, but a lot of people would, or at least over the years, the clients that have worked with me, from brands to like communities, have hired me because of my energy, because I'm able to bring like a lightness and a funness, but also navigate some big conversations. So I think I've worked out for me personally a nice sweet spot in being light and myself and taking up just enough space energetically when I need to, but then coming back to the topic. So if I'm preparing to host an event, I'll do as much, I'll have the meeting with the organizers and I'll ask them to send me over all the information about the event. And then I'll do a lot of research about the company. And if I'm interviewing anyone on the panel, I'll do as much research as I can about those people so that I have that information inside my head for if I need it, right? And then I would go on to, okay, how am I going to lay out the event? There's going to be an introduction here, and then I'm going to introduce this. So I just get into the I guess, the actual practical layout of the event, which I might have on a tablet or whatnot. And then after that, once I've done all my prep, when it comes to event day, I have to tell myself that I've done all that. Because my brain could say I've missed something, you know what I mean? They might ask me this or they might ask me that. But there's this idea, and I've talked about it on one of my Insta reels, and we call it in performance world, like you leave it at the door. And what the door is, that moment before you get on that stage, that moment before you press record on that podcast, you've done your prep, you've got your questions, the rest is out of your control. You go into the space and now it becomes a dance with the audience or a dance with that conversation, you know? So that's kind of how I prepare for events. And I'll make sure, like on my notes, I'll have like the key message that this conference or this event is about. And I will just try to intuitively bring it back to that or ask questions around that, which is what I think you do so artfully in these podcast episodes as well. And for a talk, the creative process for a talk is so much fun, man. My creative process is really messy, right? If I realize I've got a talk coming up or I want to do a talk, I'll take out a note on my phone and I'll just write a title of what I think the talk would be. But now I'm not so stuck to what the title will be. I understand that for me, everything is a work in progress until it's finished. So right at the last minute, the title might change, you know, midway through, like the topic might change, but I open up a folder and I constantly capture ideas as they come to me. When I'm walking down the street or I had a shower, I'll get out of the shower and put it on the note. And what I'm actually doing over a week or let's say a month is that I'm creatively working on this talk without knowing that I'm actively doing it. And then when, let's say, for example, it's in 2 weeks' time or whatever, now I need to go back into that folder, which is a bucket of so many rich ideas already that has been gifted to me from the universe. And then I start ordering them, and then some sort of framework would come, and then I'd start putting some of the frameworks of doing a talk into place. But it's quite a messy and emergent process for me.
It's very interesting.
And
like
finally,
highly structured. Go on.
Yeah, but different people have different creative process, right? I think a lot of people that are quite structured want to know the answer or the outcome really
They want
quickly.
certainty.
They want certainty, but the creative process is a vulnerable act, right? You can like put your systems aside and let's stay in. I call it's Disney Room 1. So if anyone's not familiar with Walt Disney's creative process, there's 3 rooms. Please check that out. It's life-changing for any creative practice, right? But room 1 is about just being expansive and just not trying to organize it just yet, because you're going to miss some gold. Rick Rubin talks about this in his book as well, you know? Like all great creators just know that you stay in this interesting zone for as long as possible before you start organizing. But some people want to get to the organizing quickly, but the organizing then comes later on for me. And sometimes I would run it by other people because in my head this might be working, but I want to test it with an audience in a small way. I'll run it by people and then tweak it, and then I'll know when it's fully ready and I'll go out and do it.
And I imagine for you, there's quite a lot of kind of trust in your process, right? You've probably honed this over, 20 years of creating. So I guess I wonder, like when you're in the process of, creating a talk, or we'll stay with talk, for instance, is there any anxiety or fear or worry that comes up for you as you're creating, as you're starting to allow all the information to emerge?
Yeah, I think sometimes my brain would have the usual things that other people's brains pop off with, which is, oh, have they heard this before? Or is there someone more qualified to give this information? And when those things come up, the other side of my brain, which is almost anticipating the critic, right? The other side of my brain says, oh, the critic's doing its thing. But if you focus this on your lived experience, you cannot be wrong, because we can say the same thing. It's like Men's Health magazine. Men's Health, bro. Why is Men's Health magazine still even out here? Every month they say the same thing. Go to the gym, eat well, sleep well. You know? So a lot of us will be saying similar things, but we want to package it up in our story. And if we go back to our story and our lived experience, and then we marry that with data and ideas, yeah, we've got something very unique that no one can, you know, I guess, compete with, because it's our lived experience.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because there is that piece, you know, definitely comes up for me a lot of, but there's someone else who knows way more about this than I do, you know. Maybe for me, even comes up as like, don't talk about this topic because there's people out there that know way more. And obviously that's kind of an endless thing, right? Because there's always someone that knows more, right? There's always, you know, I compare myself to like Esther Perel or the Gottmans or, you know, someone like John Wineland or Connor Beaton. It's like, well, I'd never do anything. I'd never create any no podcast would have ever got created, because there would be no point, because there's always someone that knows more. But like, you know, what you're saying there is that it's remembering that our lived experience has inherent value, an inherent value that's worth sharing.
100%. And what people forget, David, you see those people you mentioned, Esther Perel, Connor Beaton, John Wineland. Do you know they all have their versions of those big people, and we forget that. We think Connor Beaton is sitting out here, do you know what I mean? And he's not worried or worried about what he's saying. He's got mentors and he's got idols that he's probably comparing himself to, but he's still showing up. We forget that our idols have idols, and our idols are human and probably bricking it in so many ways. Our brain just doesn't want to remember that. It just wants to compare to the idol, and it will stop us from doing something. And so like with you know what, right? Rather than going on saying, I know all this stuff about men's work, what you can say is, in my 10 years of working with men, what I've noticed happens regularly is X. No one can argue with that. You've got 10 years in there, so there's already a value add. You've worked with hundreds, thousands of men, and this is what you've noticed. You're not saying this is a fact, but this is a recurring noticing. No one can argue with that, man. And then you can get into your piece.
Yeah, no one can argue with our perspective of what our lived experience, you know. They can interrogate it, and they can be like, you know, maybe there's things you haven't noticed, but it's still the experience that we've had.
That's so true, man. And it will resonate with someone.
Yeah, and it will support someone in their own change and transformation or learning, because they may have a similar, some similarities in experience, right? That can open up something inside their mind.
Yeah. With that, there's so many. I remember putting a video out recently, a real, I can't remember what the title was, but it alluded to that idea that you think the thing that you're going to share needs to be like bulletproof and appeal to everybody, but that cannot, that's just never a possibility with any piece of content or an idea or a book or whatever is out there. I think what has worked for me and what I coach people to do is speak to one person in particular. So for example, I put out a reel, right? And it was about like just dealing with the anxiety of getting up on stage. And there was a person I had this conversation with recently, a week prior. So when I made that video, I was looking at the camera, I was speaking to him. I just imagined the camera was him. Now the video came out and it's everything that I did say to him. And I watched it back and I was like, do I trust that this is good advice according to what I've learned? Yeah. So I'm going to put it out. And everyone that has his experience that happens to watch it would connect and would be gifted with that knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing for us to remember, innit? That there's someone out there. To somebody, we're an expert.
100%. That's so beautiful. Yeah.
So someone out there, we're an expert. And we can guide them in some way. And it's just kind of remembering that, like having the confidence to embody that aspect of ourselves, whether that's through public speaking, that's through bringing our message to the world, whether that is just, you know, speaking up in our workplaces or whatever, but it's important that we can trust in the aspect of us that is an expert. One more question before we wrap up, and it wasn't at all on my list of questions, but I mentioned them a couple of times. You in the time that we were working together, you had a pretty large gig, right? You went and sat down with the man that is Stephen Bartlett to interview him. And I guess I'm interested in, I imagine the listeners are people who have that's like a huge moment in one's career, right? To sit down with someone who is internationally known would be maybe an understatement, right? What was that like for you?
Do you know what? That's such an interesting question, bro. I know some people listening, right? Also, is it majority men listen to your podcast or women, or is the numbers about the same? Is it men?
There's
right?
a mix, but there's majority men.
Okay, right. I imagine a lot of men will have mixed views about Stephen Bartlett, which I find fascinating. I ask people what do you think of Stephen? Some people are nah, I don't like him, man. Some people are yeah, but I'm getting a lot of mixed reviews recently. So that's the first thing I want to name, because we're having this conversation at the moment and we're framing Stephen as, we're framing him in quite a positive light, but I know some people won't be interested. But hear me out on this answer is what I'm going to say. I remember getting a call from Adam, who runs the Pent Awards, and he was like, Rubes, this is going to be a big year. You're going to have a 30-minute fireside chat with Stephen in front of 1,000 people plus. I was like, okay, sick. Oh, that's great. But you know what, David? Because I've been in entertainment for 20 years and I've spoken to, interviewed on podcasts and live stages, so many people that people would consider influential or famous. For me, it was like, okay, cool, sick. I've got another really interesting person doing interesting work. How can I make this as valuable as possible for the audience and for me? That was the first thing through my mind, right? So there wasn't really much nerves. And I also see anyone famous or whatever, and Stephen's podcast does this really well. Everyone's just flawed, messy human beings trying to think, and when you think of it that way, it just makes having a conversation with them fine. But what I did know is I only had 30 minutes. Now, the team created some of the lines of inquiry and the directions on what we want to ask him. So I was quite limited in regard to my creative agency or what I wanted to ask. But what I did find interesting about that is that Stephen is so good at giving as much value as he possibly can in the shortest possible time. His brain is able to understand a question, synthesize. It's almost like in real time, he's like, boom, you're asking me that question. Cool. Let me go through my entire podcast list and put that bit from will.i.am and that bit from, Michelle Obama or whatever, and then just give you that. And he was just so good at that. So I would ask him a question and he would just pack it with value for the audience. And it was almost a masterclass in giving value. But it was fun, man. My preparation was almost done because I listened to so much of his podcast anyway, right? I had a whole heap of, if it was the Reuben show, for example, if he was to come on my show, whatever that show would be, oh mate, the conversation would have went down another route. I just really want to get deeper and deeper into his humanity. Where his fears are, where his worries are. That shit really energizes me. But yeah, we had to keep it around the topic, which was creativity and innovation at the time. Yeah, enjoyable. And I won't be surprised if me and him have a chat again in some sort of way. Well, we'll see.
See what comes up.
Yeah, man, just everyone's human, If we look at it like that, if there's someone listening and they're a host or an interviewer or whatnot, again, just lean into the humanity of whoever you're speaking to. And yeah, I just like to get rid of hierarchy so that we can actually have a fucking conversation.
Stop putting people on pedestals and just look at them eye to eye.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I think that's an important something that I've had to really learn through podcasting. Actually, I've spoke to people who I've followed for years and idols and stuff like that, and something that I realized it's really good if we humanize them as quickly as possible, not make them flawed. All humans are flawed. Not put them beneath you, but just see them as like you said, just another messy human who is trying to work it all out Like, and when you do that, like, it's, for me, it just kind of, we can laugh and joke. We can start to laugh and joke. We can laugh at you and we can laugh at me.
Right.
Then we can kind of just get into what's real, and we can allow the moment to unfold as well. Like, when you put people on a pedestal too much, I find you're trying to plan to make it great, or make yourself appear to be great in their presence, instead of just being you with them.
And it's exactly that, bro. And Stephen does this well. Like, you would think, okay, Stephen's an internationally famous guy now. He's on stages. He's got one of the biggest podcasts in the world. He's just under Joe Rogan, from what I remember. But he must be worried and shook and starstruck when he's speaking to some of the people on his podcast. But we can't see the inner experience. All we can see is what people looks like on the outside. But as we all know, sometimes we may look a certain way, but our inside is a mess, right? we don't know if he's nervous or anything. But what I think he does well, and it's something that I've got a lot better at as well, coming from performance, which is about me, to moving into facilitation and interviewing, which is about the guest or the subject, is just, if you go in there, remain a student. Like, curiosity is your greatest superpower when it comes to interviewing people. You go in there, I almost press Control Alt Delete on everything I think I know when I go into a conversation with someone I want to learn something from, and that way I'm open. And as I'm asking more questions and gaining more information, like, the people who are listening or watching are coming on that same journey with me. And if we just, can be a student in those situations, the fear kind of pipes down, because we're not trying to be right. We're not trying to take up space really in an interviewing kind of capacity. We're a vessel. And it just really helps with the process, I think.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Yeah, it's an important thing to remember, even for myself.
I wanted to ask you a question.
Go on.
Yeah, I'm mindful of time as well, so you're gonna have to answer.
Okay.
What is your? Do you have any edges around your visibility or taking up more space? Because you've done the podcast for years. I know you do workshops, you do talks, but I guess, and I'm not trying to get you in as a client. I'm just where do you think your expansion in terms of your profile and visibility might lie? I'm curious.
I think I don't talk about, and as you know, I think about this stuff quite regularly. I don't talk about fatherhood that much. Have you probably noticed it's not something I talk about that publicly? I think because I'm really mindful of, there's a very good reason, really mindful of, like we said before, things stay on the internet, right? And I don't mind my son Bjorn finding out about my sexual escapades and dating life and all sorts, which he will be able to find, right? But what I'm really mindful of is what I say about my experience of being with him, because there only comes this, I could say some very adult things that will take an adult awareness and adult self-awareness to digest. And he might find these things at 10, 12, 14 years old. And they may impact how he feels that I feel about him.
Right. Okay.
So I'm really mindful of kind of that area. So that's something that it's something I want to talk more about. And I have some plans to do a kind of whole series on fatherhood. So that's something that definitely is a bit of an edge for me. I think that in terms of in-person events, I don't feel as confident in my in-person facilitation skills as I do online. It's only just for me to realize, and it's weird that it's nonsensical, right? Because when I have done things in person, they've really landed really beautifully, but it's because I don't do it as often. At the moment I'm running 2 kind of men's programs, one my avoidant man program, and the other program is a community. So almost twice a week I'm showing up and I'm delivering some content, or I'm delivering some practices and stuff like that. So I think that's an area that I'd like to grow in my confidence in. So I think talking about fatherhood, I talk a lot about my own father and that experience. And I think sometimes I have a habit of not necessarily talking about my current struggles very publicly. I might give it some time and talk about it afterwards. but that's probably the areas of my visibility of self that don't kind of creep out into the ether. The first one for very good reason. The second one is more down to like I said, not to some degree nonsensical lack of confidence. I think it's just a lack of practice. I got into this work really mid-COVID, and for 2 years we couldn't really do anything in person. So I think there's an atrophying of those, that muscle. Something I want to do more this year. And talking about like very current struggles that are very personal, and even some degree relational. There's some aspect of mine and Orsa's relationship that I do keep to some degree. There's a sacredness. We kind of haven't even agreed upon this. There's no agreement with us, but it's more of a case of like, let's keep some aspects of our relationship both private and sacred. Like, I do try and make sure I talk about the fact that we do have relationship struggles, because a relationship isn't perfect. And I think sometimes people view us that way online, some people that follow us. But I'm really mindful of like not getting too much into the nitty gritty details and airing, especially stuff that's not my stuff, that's, her stuff publicly. And I think, now you've got me on a roll, I think one of my fears around my visibility is, and it's kind of come up, is there's like a voice often in my head that's like an angry feminist. So when I write some stuff sometimes, it's like a very angry, radical feminist in my mind who's basically saying like anything I'm putting out is like anti-woman, So sometimes that has censored me, where there's things I want to say about women, and there's particularly my clients' experiences around women that I sometimes will censor because I'm like, oh, is that going to get me into trouble? And it's something I'm very consciously working on, like meeting that edge.
That's beautiful awareness, man. In regard to what you said about Bjorn, that is such a loving consideration that you're holding. Like if I was working with you, I wouldn't even push you on that because it makes a lot of sense. It's coming from a place of love and protection over your son. And it feels like less of a block. The reason why you're not doing that is because of love and care. That makes sense. And yeah, I would have never thought what you just shared. I would never have thought there's a bit of an edge around feeling like an angry feminist, because I know me and you have gone in on some of the comments of Stephanie Riggs on one of Stephanie Riggs' posts on attachment, right? When she put up a post about how to be with an avoidantly attached man. And some of the women were just popping off. Like, we're assuming they're more anxiously leaning. And you came in really, I thought, like in a really grounded way to almost like defend the people that weren't in the conversation, which was avoidantly attached people. And I thought you'd done it with an energy that was open, but strong. So yeah, that's news to me. That's a fear you hold. But again, this is what I'm going back to saying, right? Like I would hold you up here high in such high regard, but you're still navigating some of that stuff, but you are still saying it. And I think that's important.
Yeah. That's the hard thing, is still saying things, even though you know that there's going to be people that disagree with you, and some people disagree with you very vehemently, right?
Yeah,
because to some degree they're defending their position. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not, I guess I'm going to say that I'm wrong for sharing what I'm sharing, because my perspective has a uniqueness, for instance.
Yeah.
And I finish up with saying, it's like I work with a lot of avoidant men and have done for the last couple of years. So when people are like, avoidant men are trash, they never change, they're abusive, they're cruel, they're mean, I will stand and go, well, actually, no, you're not right. Like that's might be true for some people, but I don't actually talk about very often about the abuse. I've literally known abuse that some of my clients have experienced, like gaslighting and abuse and, lying, that my avoidant men have experienced from anxious women, right? No one wants to talk about that. There's anxious people that want to talk about that online, for instance. And I do pepper it in from time to time more and more now. But I just don't feel it's really my place or the thing I really want to be talking about. I'm not deliberately, I will be polarizing, but I'm not necessarily antagonizing unnecessarily, because I think sometimes that detaches from the message beneath that.
Yeah. You're doing great work regardless, bro. Like how I see you show up. So yeah, hats off.
Thank you, man. And listeners, you're probably wondering, where you can listen more to Reuben. I'm gonna insert myself here, of like his content is really, if you're a person who wants to be more visible, who wants to show up with more authentic communication, and you want to show up in speaking and bringing your message to the world, Reuben's been doing this for 20 years, as he said, and his content supports you to do this. I'm not saying this as someone who, like, before I met Reuben, I was following Reuben, to say that to people. So I really know the power of his work, and I know the energy and effort he puts into the people he works with. And also, he gave you snippets of what happens to those people, because not speaking and not putting yourself out in the world, like as Reuben said before, is like a theft. It's like a crime. Because I think more and more, and this kind of tails into like what I do with men that I work with, is just like, it's part of our journey to bring who we are to the world. And when we allow fear to stop us, it's like, it's almost like letting the devil win, right? You might not believe in the devil. I don't actually really believe in the devil, to be honest. I believe in God, but I don't believe in the devil. But it is this, I think it's the closest that I can really compare to like letting the devil win, is letting fear, especially this illogical fear, hold us back from bringing our authentic selves and authentic message to the world. Because I think it's part of our human evolution to bring our authentic message. And why does this touch upon relationships in my world? Is because this is what I do with men, is like, how can I help you bring more of you to the world, so that your relationships become an expression of who you are and what you want to create in the world. So that's a very long-winded way to say to Reuben, where can people find you? And how can they work with you, and what have you kind of got coming up that people can join into?
Firstly, I just want to say, can you snippet that intro bit that you bigged me up, and then stick it onto this back bit that you just bigged me up, and then send me that audio file? I'm gonna make a reel out of that, baby. Thank you, bro. That's really fucking kind of you, David. I really appreciate the intentionality in that message right there. Wow. Oh, I'm in my feelings right now, boy. Okay, so in regards to where you can find me, I mean, the main HQ would probably be my website, which is reubenchristian.com. That's REUBEN, Christian spelled like the religion, CHRISTIAN.com. And then all my social links are there, which is Instagram, which is @ReubenChristian1, and then LinkedIn, if you're more of a LinkedIn kind of person, and even TikTok. I mean, I'm kind of new to TikTok, but I'm putting my videos out on TikTok. And in regards to like the content and the videos that I'm creating, on my Instagram reels, I've been putting some of those out, ideally every week, but the last 2 weeks I've been flopping, so I need to jump back on that. And those same videos are out there on TikTok, and they're all about visibility and public speaking. So the visibility part is moving, it's like frameworks and ideas and philosophies to move past the fear of being seen. And then the public speaking part gives like practical tips on how to do the public speaking and showing up piece. And in regards to projects I have coming up, I mean, there's a big focus at the moment on the visibility and speaking coaching, which really is under communication, right? I'm working with people one-on-one to help them speak up, take up space, get their work out there, get themselves out there a little bit more. That's like one-on-one coaching. I've also got an offering called Talk Prep. So if you have a talk coming up and you're absolutely shitting it, or you just want to finesse it a bit more, that's like 2 sessions, where we kind of get into what you want to say, and then you go away and do some work, and we come back and we just gloss it up and get some practice in. So it will just prepare you for the talk. And the thing that I'm working on now in terms of communication is staff training, which is called Speak Easy. And it covers everything from public speaking to negotiating to dealing with conflict, to networking. So it's all about communication, but we're just focusing on all those different ways that we need to communicate in our professional and personal lives at the moment. So that will all be up on my website. And then on top of that, bro, I'm hosting live events, and I'm creating a pilot for a new show, maybe a TV show. I don't know what it's going to be, but yeah, interesting stuff that I'm doing at the moment. But you can check it all out on ReubenChristian.com.
Beautiful.
Thank you for having me, David. It's been a great conversation. Yeah.
No, it's been a great conversation. It's been long overdue. You know, as listeners, I'm going to let you into a little snippet. I know we've gone way over time, but it's okay. I've talked to Reuben about having him on a podcast, and you have a little kind of running joke that I've mentioned a few times that me and a mutual friend, Merv, who's also been on the podcast once or twice. We should do a little podcast series where we just talk about life stuff, because, you know, we weekly have conversations that are quite deep and in depth of three men really thinking about themselves and life and our impact and trying to make a difference in the world. So maybe I can persuade those two to do that little mini series. But I'll finish up by saying a big thank you to Reuben for bringing his wisdom to the episode today. You know, these are topics that I am still learning on, you know, still got my edges to smooth off and expand into. So big thank you to you. And listeners, if you've enjoyed this episode and you know someone who could really do with this, someone who's not bringing themselves into the world, someone who's struggling to speak up and openly, like, share this episode with them. It might be your boss at work. It might be your good friend. This might be one of the episodes you share around your company, you know, because there's so many people that we work with that have great messages that, you know, they just they don't believe in themselves and their ability to stand up on stage and talk, or stand up in a meeting and talk. So support them if you can, you know, share the love, share the episode. It's much appreciated when you do that. So I guess I wrap up there, and I guess the last thing to say to you all is ciao, ciao.